chapter 8, verses 6 to 11. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. You, however, are not in the realm of the flesh, but are in the realm of the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, they do not belong to Christ. But if Christ is in you, then even though your body is subject to death because of sin, the Spirit gives life because of righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his Spirit who lives in you. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Could we stand now for our gospel reading, please? Our gospel reading is from John chapter 11, verses 1 to 45. Now, a man I forgot that bit. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going back." Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no sight." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we might die with him." On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is coming to the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and he is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odour, for he has been laid there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Let's pray. Lord, as we reflect on your word this morning, we ask that you would reveal to us the truths that you wish us to know. Amen. We're going to start with a question this morning, which should come up shortly on the screen, if the desks are awake. Why have you come to church this morning? So there's 3 possible suggestions. There are many more. Maybe you're hunting. Maybe you're looking for answers to life's questions. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you're hurting. Maybe there's a lot going in your life at the moment and things are really challenging. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe you want to know more about God and you're really keen to know more about Jesus. Or maybe there's another reason why you're here today. We're all on a life journey. Some of us are further on that journey than others, but we're all on a life journey, and we're all hunting, we're all following, and we're all looking for things. Today's reading, we're focusing on the passage from John's Gospel, which, thanks Kerry, that was a great read. That's a journey. There are physical journeys in there. There are journeys of the messengers to Jesus and Jesus going to Bethany, but there's also a spiritual journey as well. We're going to unpack that a little bit together this morning. While we're doing that, I'd just like us all to just think and listen for what God might be saying to us this morning. Might be a word that jumps out. Might be something that pops into your head. Just a bit of context before we move into the story. So, up until this point, Jesus has been doing teachings, he's been preaching, he's been healing, and the religious leaders have become more and more angry. Jesus is not conforming to what they think should be happening. And they're, quite frankly, getting a bit ticked off. And then we come to this bit. So Jesus, at this point, has moved from Jerusalem because it's no longer safe for him. And he's out preaching probably about a day's journey from Bethany, which is where the story that Kerry read to us is happening. So that's a bit of background there. I love a good story. Who here likes a good story? Yeah. I'm sure there's some on the bookstall, by the way, good stories. I love a good story, and I love a story that's broken into chapters, because actually by the time I get in bed on a night, I haven't got much longer than a chapter before I'm asleep. So this story this morning I've broken into chapters, and each chapter we're going to consider a question as we're going through. So the first chapter is called The Message. So here we have Lazarus, who's gravely ill, and a message is sent to Jesus to tell him this news. Now, another bit of background here. Lazarus is not just a sort of a bit of an acquaintance of Jesus. He's a really close friend. So Martha and Mary and Lazarus are really good friends with Jesus. He spent time with them at their home. There's a real personal relationship there. So the question is, if you'd received this message that Jesus received, how would you have felt and what would you have done? Well, for me, I would have jumped straight in the car, granted there were cars, and I would have dashed straight over. I would have wanted to be there. So we move on to chapter 2, which we've titled Staying Put. Jesus gets this message, but he stays where he is. And he also comes out with a really strange statement. He says, this sickness is not going to end in death. It's for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. See, Jesus already has intel on this situation. Jesus is already aware of what's going on. Now, how does he know? No mobile phones, no internet, no emails, no messenger. So how does Jesus know what's going on? Well, I think he prayed. We know from the Bible that Jesus was in constant communication with the Father. He regularly took himself off and went and prayed and spoke to God. I think Jesus was in the loop. He knew what was going on here. So, despite his feelings about his friends, he was obedient. He stayed where he was. So what can we learn from this? Well, I think Jesus is probably teaching us that we need to share our deepest concerns with God. Whatever's going on in our lives, God already knows, but he wants us to share them with him. He wants us to talk to him. He wants to be part of what's happening. And also that we need to trust him then. That's the hard bit, isn't it? I don't mind the telling God how I feel. Probably gets fed up of hearing that. But the waiting and the trusting, that's not always easy. And then, the next chapter. We've titled this one Go, because 2 days later, Jesus gets his disciples together and he tells them that they're going back. Now, as we read in the reading, the disciples were not very happy. In fact, to say that they were unhappy would probably be an understatement. They were really, really concerned about the idea of going back to the place that Jesus had left because there was a threat to his life. So they tried to talk him out of it. And then Jesus starts talking about light and darkness, and basically what he's saying to his disciples is, look, God's still got work for us to do. God's still got work for me to do. And while God's got work for me to do, the darkness that is coming, and we think about that in a couple of weeks' time when we think about Good Friday, the darkness that's coming is not yet. It's not the timing. It's okay for me to go back because God's got work for me to do. So, off the set. How do you face fear? I am probably one of the best worriers on the planet. My husband will testify to this. So my usual response to fear is, oh, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if? Maybe you handle it differently. So what can we learn from this little bit with the disciples? Well, we can learn that Jesus wants us to bring our fears to him and to trust him that he will walk with us no matter what we're going through. And I think sometimes we need to hear that. Whatever we are going through, Jesus wants to walk with us. We're never on our own. So in this time of fear, what does Jesus do? Well, in the next chapter, we get hope and encouragement. The disciples need something to look forward to. They're going to go back into a challenging situation. They're nervous. So what does Jesus do? Well, he tells them it's going to be amazing. There's going to be something amazing that happens when they go back. They don't want to miss it. They want to be there. And he encourages them. He tells them that there will be life coming out of death. Lazarus is going to be raised. Now, I often wonder that when they set off, they had this day journey walking to get back from where Jesus was to Bethany. What did they talk about? I mean, I'm sure they didn't walk for 24 hours not speaking to each other. I wonder what they talked about. What was that day all about? I wonder, maybe it was a time of preparation. Maybe Jesus was preparing his disciples, giving some more teaching, a bit more encouragement. Maybe it was a preparation time for Jesus, knowing what was ahead. So how's God encouraged you? Because even in our darkest times, and we all have them, God encourages us. And sometimes it's good to look back on those dark times and remember that. So Jesus arrives in Bethany, and we get to our next chapter, which is face to face. So first of all, Jesus meets Martha. Martha comes out and speaks to Jesus. And then a little later on, Mary also greets Jesus. Did anybody spot the repeating statement in the reading of the sisters? Lord, if you'd been here, our brother wouldn't have died. They both say exactly the same thing, separately, exactly the same thing. What a statement of faith. They know, they've seen what Jesus has done. They believe who he is. And they have faith. But you know what? They're also human beings. And they still have questions and uncertainties. And that's me. And that's probably a lot of you. I wonder what they must have been thinking when Jesus didn't turn up straight away. They sent the message. They were probably waiting. And then he didn't arrive. I wonder what they were thinking. I wonder how they felt. How do you feel when God doesn't appear to answer when you call out to him? When he doesn't seem to be listening? Angry? Frustrated? Upset? Disappointed? Confused? So what's Jesus teaching us here? Well, I think one of the things he's teaching us is that his timing is perfect. Even when we don't see it, his timing is perfect. And that he's always with us, whatever we face. Now we're moving now towards the climax of the story. No spoilers, but we have actually had the reading, so we do know how this story ends. But before that, there's a really dramatic part of this story. And this is called, I've titled this chapter, The Declaration. Jesus comes out with this statement to Martha. Listen to this. I think these verses are amazing. I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. See, Jesus doesn't just give life. Jesus is life. He is the resurrection, and he is the life, and death has no power over Jesus. He is the resurrection. He is the life. Notice the present tense, is. But then Jesus asks Martha, do you believe this? Do you believe I am the resurrection and the life? Do you believe that When you live, even though you die, you'll never die. And I think Jesus is asking us that this morning. Do we believe that? So how do we respond to that question? I'm going to leave you thinking about that for a minute. And then we get the next chapter. It's here. Demonstration. The climax of the story. Jesus raises Lazarus. Done. Let's just break it down a bit. 3 statements that Jesus makes at this point. Remove the stone. Jesus knows that Lazarus is going to walk out of this tomb. He knows that death has been overcome. Let's get rid of the barrier. Let's move the barrier out of the way. Isn't that just what Jesus did on the cross for us? Remove the barrier of sin and death. And then, I like this. Jesus stops and he prays, Father, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for hearing me. He's thanking God for the miracle before he even reveals it. And then, and I was sharing the 9 o'clock, the last bit. When I planned this first time and I read the sermon back and checked back with the reading, I'd missed a word. And it's really important. Because Jesus says, Lazarus, come out. I'd just written, come out. Jesus is personal. He's personal with all of us, every one of us in here. He wants a personal relationship with. Lazarus, come out of death into life. He's revealing life over death. So, if you've been on the Bible course, we're now at the what now bit. What now? Well, for many, it was a great spectacle, marvellous miracle, but let's just go home for tea now. Unmoved, unchanged. But for many, it tells us in verse 45, they believed, many believed, and it was the beginning of a completely new life. They saw, and they were transformed. Now, we didn't have verse 46, but if you read verse 46, there were other people who saw, but they didn't see because they went away and started plotting for Jesus' death. The raising of Lazarus is more than just a miracle of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Before this event, Jesus' teachings were infuriating the religious leaders. Now, they were plotting for his death. Some commentators say that by Jesus going back to save one person and raise one person, he was actually setting himself on a path to the cross where he would save all people. And that includes you, and it includes me. Lazarus' resurrection was a foreshadowing of Jesus' resurrection. Lazarus would have to die again. Jesus was raised to glory to be with the Father forever. So the final thought for today. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? What's your answer today? If you've never considered about Jesus and what Jesus has done for you, if you've never really joined up the dots before, that actually Jesus came to lift us out of sin, to take our sin and to give us new life, then why not ask him to do that today for you? If you want to pray that quietly, that's fine. If you want to come and ask myself or Gareth afterwards to pray with you, then we would love to. Knowing Jesus and walking with Jesus is the greatest thing that you can ever do. And there are so many people here who know that and would testify to that. So why not make today the day that you say yes to Jesus?